What's up guys, Rage Quitting here, back with another video guide for you guys, and today I want to show you how to play the Willbender Guardian. It's a really fun spec, very high mobility, very good damage. A lot of your defense happens at the same time as your offense, so when you go in with certain skills, you put blind around your target and you get Aegis, so a lot of things happen at the same time, so you don't really have to think about it too much. You just go ham. This is like the man's spec right here. When you're playing it, it feels really good to play. It feels like you're on crack, man. You're roided up. You're juiced. This is the juicy, super fun, high mobility, very good damage. It always seems like there's things to do, It's a very high APM build. Let me go ahead and show you guys the build, and we'll get right into it here, okay? So for the build, we're taking Radiance, Virtues, and of course Willbender. So in Radiance, we're going to take right hand strength. Your precision is increased, gain increased power while wielding a one-handed weapon. Main hand sword skills gain reduced recharge. We like this because our main hand sword skills, especially for Symbol of Blades, is on a very, very low cooldown. This is what you use to teleport all over the place and keep up with your damage. Every time you teleport onto an enemy, you put a blind on them as well, and it gives you crit chance. All right, next one up here is Retribution. Strike damage dealt is increased while you have Resolution. So if you don't know, Resolution is whenever you use one of your virtue skills, your F1, F2, or F3. Anytime you use them, you will now gain Resolution, which will increase your damage by 10%. And then down here, Righteous Instinct. Resolution increases your chance to critically hit. So now when you use your F skills, you will also get a crit chance increase by 40%. So you're pretty much always toggling through your F skills right before you're about to burst your targets down so that you get more crit chance and big damage there. Okay, so next up here, we're going to take Virtues. So in the top, Unscathed Contender, strike damage dealt is increased while you have Aegis. So this double dips on your F3 ability. So when you use your F3 ability, you gain some Aegis, you gain damage reduction, you gain stability, and then now you're going to also get 20% damage increase, plus the talent here for 40% crit chance, plus 10% damage increase from here too. So we're just stacking all these modifiers whenever we use our F abilities before we go in with our burst, okay? Next up here, activating Virtue Skill 2 removes conditions from nearby allies. Virtue Skill 2's passive effect is stronger. So Virtue Skill 2 is a mobility skill. Well, they're all mobility skills now, but when you go ahead and use it, there's an evade frame on it, and you dash forward and you gain swiftness and might and all this kind of good stuff. So Flowing Resolve is your F2 ability, and now with the build here, it has more condition removal and healing. Going down here in Indomitable Courage, the active effect of Virtue Skill 3 breaks stun and grants stability to nearby allies. So now your F3 ability is also a stun break. For the utilities, we're using a couple stun breaks, and then now we also have F3 for a stun break as well, along with everything else that it gives you. It'll now also break stun. So with this spec, you should never really die in stuns. Like if you die in a stun, it should only be because you have no stun breaks available. Okay, so very nice there. Going down into the Willbender side now, power for power, gain increased power. Willbender flames deal increased damage to foes they strike. Damage increases 100%, and then you get a passive plus 120 power. Next, down here, Vanguard Tactics, activating Crashing Courage, grants resistance. Shadow Stepping grants resolution and protection. So you have a lot of shadow steps with your weapon set. Your sword 2 is a shadow step. Judge's Intervention is a shadow step. Sword 5 is also a shadow step. So anytime you use your teleports, you're gonna gain protection and resolution and resistance. So you can get it from your F abilities, and you can get it from your shadow steps to increase your damage. These talents up here, okay, they synergize very well together. All right, and then down here, Tyrant's Momentum, lethal tempo grants increased damage but has reduced duration. Justice's duration is modified. So lethal tempo happens right here. It's another talent point. Each time you activate a virtue or your virtue's passives are triggered, you gain a damage bonus. So more damage stacking whenever we use our F abilities, okay? All right, so now going into the amulets and the runes, we're going to use Marauder Amulet, Power, Precision, Vitality, Ferocity, everything that we need. We're going to use the Rune of Divinity to increase all of our stats and our maximum HP. We're using Greatsword and Sword for our weapon sets. On the Greatsword, we're going to use Sigil of Battle, gain 4 stacks of might when you swap to this weapon while in combat. And then the Sigil of Exploitation, deal 5% extra damage to targets below 50% health, just to make sure that we can, you know, execute the low health targets whenever we want to. Okay, on the swords here, we're going to use Sigil of Cleansing and Sigil of Energy. Weapon swapping happens very often. Your main source of damage is going to come from your Greatsword, but the sword has really good damage too. But we're just going to use Sigil of Cleansing and Sigil of Energy on the secondary weapon set because it's really nice to remove conditions and get some endurance back so that you can use more dodge rolls whenever you swap to these weapons in combat. Very useful. So for the utility skills for the heal, it's a toss-up between the Signet and this Reversal of Fortune. Very long paragraph, but basically you throw up a guard, and if you get hit, it'll heal you for more. And you can't die if you're guarding with your heal, basically. The downside to this is if you use your heal at the wrong time and nobody attacks you, then you're not going to get much health back from it. So the heal is actually kind of weak too. It's only like 4.3k, and if nobody hits you, it's only 2k, but it's on a very low cooldown, and it has two charges on it. So you could use it, you know, pretty often, and you kind of want to use it when you're higher on HP, you know, so you kind of want to use it more often when you're higher on HP and not when you're low, because when you're like really low and you don't use your heal, like you wait a little bit too long, you know, the healing that you get back from it is not a whole lot. So you kind of want to be using it more often to get more value out of it. Use it to top yourself off. Okay, next one up here, Judge's Intervention. Teleport to your target and burn nearby foes. This is a really good stun break and a gap closer. It has a 1200 range on it, and it'll put some burning on the target. The burning part doesn't really matter because we're not playing conditions, but you know, it's a stun break and it's a teleport at the same time. Next up here, Whirling Light. This is one of my favorite abilities in Willbender. It just does so much friggin' damage. It's a AoE around your body like this, okay? Puts weakness on the target, puts weakness and a little bit of burn on the target, and it just does so much damage, man. And it's on a very low cooldown too. So pretty much anytime you port in onto your target with any one of your ports, you use your F abilities to gain that extra damage that we're stacking with the traits here, and then you hit them with the Whirling Light, and it's just like, dude, so much damage. And it's AoE too, so it's really good for when everybody's stacked up on the points and you can just cleave out everybody at the same time. Next one up here is Contemplation of Purity. Convert the conditions you are suffering from into boons, and it's a stun break. So whenever you have a bunch of debuffs on you or conditions, you can then convert those into buffs or boons, as they call it in Guild Wars 2, and you can remove stun with it as well. Okay, and then the elite skill here is Renewed Focus. Focus, making yourself invulnerable and recharging your virtues. So it's a 3-second duration, immune to everything, and also when the effect ends, your F skills will be refreshed. So typically what you want to do is make sure you have used all of your F skills like this. I'm going to use them all, and then go ahead and hit this. I'm immune to everything for 3 seconds, and then boom, our F skills recharge, so you can go ahead and use them some more. Okay, Alright guys, so now that we've got the build out of the way, we're going to go ahead and show you how to play the weapon set itself. So right now we're going to talk about the Greatsword. So first we have an auto attack here, then we have your Whirling Wrath. This is your big damage ability here, along with Leap of Faith. But your Whirling Wrath is your spin to win. Spin like this, deal damage in an AoE. Next one is Leap of Faith. It's a leap like this, and when you land, it does big damage, and it puts blind on the target as well. Your 4 skill is the Symbol of Resolution. You gain resolution here while you're standing in this thing, and then it also combo fields with your Whirling Wrath. So if you wanted to cleanse some conditions on you and nearby allies, you can go ahead and put the sword 4 down and then start sword 2 spinning in it, and it'll throw out some cleansing bolts. Okay, and then the Binding Blade here, when you're standing in melee range or pretty close to melee range, you do this, it throws a blade out at the target, then the ability changes to pull, then you can pull the target to you, and that pull is AoE as well. So if you hit multiple targets with that, you can pull a lot of people back towards you. Let's go ahead and talk about the F abilities real quick. So F1, your Rushing Justice, this is one of your main damaging abilities as well. It does really good damage. It has a rush kind of gap close on it as well, and when you land, it's another blind. So you want to use your F abilities early before you do really heavy damage, or right as you know you're going to do heavy damage. You try to use one of your F abilities first, because you're going to get all the damage modifiers that we spec for, right? Just as an example here, big damage with Greatsword and F1 can come up in here. F1, Sword 3, Sword 2, and that's just really big damage right there. Okay, that's when you're already in range to hit people with your F1 ability. So from melee, you're already in the skirmish, and this is a combo that you can do F1 to sword 2 and then sword 3, or you can F1 sword 3 and then sword 2, whatever. If they're moving around and you need these gap closers, then you can use F1 sword 3 for an extra gap closer, right? But if you're going to open from range, we like to use Judge's Intervention to teleport onto the target, but you want to start your Whirling Wrath spin first, and you see how the Whirling Wrath has a 3/4 second channel. Right when you press the ability, it doesn't start doing damage yet until this cast is finished. So if you take a look over here and you watch this cast right there, that's when it actually starts dealing damage. So what you want to do is you want to pre-cast your Whirling Wrath and then port onto the target with Judge's Intervention. Okay, so it's going to look something like this: spin and then shadow step onto the target like that. Okay, that's your basic opener from ranged. But once you've done that and you're now in the fight now, then you can go ahead and use your F1 ability and hit them with the Leap of Faith. Okay, so that first thing that I showed you looks like this. Boom, F1, and then boom, Leap of Faith. Once all the cooldowns come back, I'll do the full combo. Okay, so we're gonna pretend like we're opening from ranged, then we're gonna pre-cast the spin, teleport on them with Judge's Intervention, and then we're gonna use F1 and then Greatsword 3. Okay, so it's gonna look like this. Boom, F1, Greatsword 3, boom. Really, really big damage. Now, after that, you still have damage because you have your Whirling Light. This is your utility skill that we get with Willbender. Okay, it's a physical skill. Just does massive damage in an AoE around you. And then we can weapon swap and continue another set of burst damage here. Okay, but we're going to stick with the Greatsword one more time. So let's add another ability here to our combo. Okay, so opening from ranged, pre-cast the Whirling Wind, step onto the target, F1, sword 3, and then now we're going to use our Whirling Light, you know, our utility ability right there. Okay, so that's pretty much the Greatsword combos, and you can adjust it however you see fit depending on what's happening in the game, right? But typically Whirling Wrath and then shadow step onto them with Judge's Intervention, and then you can go ahead and do your F1 sword 3 combo. Okay, and then just use Whirling Light whenever you can. Basically, it's on a very low cooldown, 15 seconds, and it does very, very big damage. Okay, we just want to always make sure that we're refreshing our buffs that we're getting from the tree whenever we use a virtue skill. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about the sword, the double sword build. So auto attack, your sword 2 is that teleport, right? Looks like this. You teleport to the target, boom, and then you put this circle on the ground. It's a blind when you land and you get crit chance, right? Sword 3 is it shoots projectiles out like this. And while you're doing that, you're blocking projectiles as well. You have to remain still when you're channeling this though, because it'll get canceled if you move. Okay. Your 4 skill, Executioner's Calling, is a very, very big damage. It has like a double hit on it. So you'll see him like swing and then boom, double swing. And it does really big damage. Here, I'll show you like this. Boom, boom. That is one of your main damaging abilities right there. But it's hard to land when people are moving around. So what you want to do first is use your 5 skill, Advancing Strike. It dashes forward and then it steps onto the target. And when you land that shadow step part, it'll immobilize the target. But you have to do it from like a medium range. You can't do it from too far away or else it's not going to shadow step. Okay, so it looks like this. It dashes forward and then it steps to the target. It looks like this. See, I was out of range. I started it from too far away, so we're gonna try that again. We'll do it from maybe like right here. Okay, so here we go. This is what it looks like. Boom, boom. And once you land that blink, then it'll root the target, and then you can go ahead and do your sword 4 skill, the big damage one like this. Okay, so typically to make sure that I'm in range of it too, and you also want to put the blind on the enemy target, so we're gonna start with the sword 2 and then do a 5 and then a 4. Okay, for that full combo. Sword 2, shadow step to the target, putting the blind on them. Then we're going to sword 5, which will blink on them and root them, and then sword 4, which does the big burst damage. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and just use a F1 skill too before we get on there. All right, so boom. Okay, big damage. Okay, so those are the basic combos. All right, so it's gonna be like, you know, get your buffs, whirl, teleport on, F1, Greatsword 3, and then you can like switch weapons, port onto them, sword 5 to root them, and then sword 4 for the big damage, and then you can always use your utility skill for even more damage after that. Okay, and yeah, just keep chasing with the sword 2. And if you don't have abilities to use, you can always swap weapons at that point. Your skills should be reset, then continue the chase with your Greatsword 3 and your F1, because your F1 is like a little dash too, right? Your F2 has a dash, and your F3 has like a little teleport as well too. So all of your F abilities are now mobility skills. Your weapon set has a lot of mobility. With the ports and the leaps, we have our mobility on our utility skill as well. So nothing should be able to get away from you. You know, you should be able to keep up with damn near anything that you're going to be up against. Problem is, it's kind of hard to run away from things, but you still have the tools in order to do so, right? So like I said, your F abilities, if you de-target by clicking off of your target, you can use your F abilities as escape tools as well. So if I go ahead and use F1, and then F2, and then F3 like this, you know, you can cover some ground. And then also using our Greatsword 3 to cover some ground as well, okay? If you need to run away and escape, you can always try to do that. Okay, but that's it for the guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna go ahead and put, we're gonna start the gameplay right now. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on another one. Alright guys, I didn't want this video to be too long, so I started with the second half of this ranked match here. The first half didn't go as planned. Our team got wiped like twice in the beginning, and we were triple capped at one point too, so we're coming from behind here. But anyway, as I approach the node here, we're going to precast the Greatsword 2 and then pour it in with Judge's Intervention, doing big AoE damage here. F1, Greatsword 3, using our utility skill for big AoE here, putting up a block, and then using F3 to port back in to break that knockdown, and then swapping weapons here to continue the chase. Sword 2 to port on, Sword 5 to root, and then using the 4 skill for big damage. And then as we rotate back into mid here, Sword 2 is off cooldown. I'm going to pour it in and start using the whirlwinding, you know, the utility attack there for some heavy damage. And then on this one, again, precasting the Greatsword 2 and then porting in with Judge's Intervention, F1, F3, utility skill, big damage here, swapping weapons, Sword 2 to put the blind, 5 to root, and then 4 for some big damage, using the F3 also to do AoE damage because it puts that burn on the ground as well. Sword 2 to keep up, F1, shooting out the projectiles with the Sword 3, swap weapons, Greatsword 3, Greatsword 2. You just, and the utility skill here, you can see just how much cleave damage this build has. It's really good single target, but even better when you can AoE things on point here. Swapping weapons to keep up with the damage here, Sword 2 to put the blind down, and then just auto-attacking things. I use my F2 to refresh the buffs that I had, F1, and then just cleaving this guy down so that I can start capping the node. Here, the Necro tries to interrupt the node again, so I get on him with the F1 first. Sword 2 to put the blind, 5 to root him, and then 4 to do the heavy damage. Weapon swap, Greatsword 3 to gap close, using the F3 there because I was rooted, to break the root and port back onto the node, using the utility skill for big AoE damage there. Swapping weapons, Sword 2, Sword 4, cleaving them out. F1 again, switch weapons, F3, Greatsword 3. And then the whirling utility skill there. Big damage again, man. That skill is like probably my favorite ability in the entire game. Very low cooldown, very big damage. Use it often. Alright, so we get our we secure our node, and then rotating back into mid here. Judge's Intervention to step onto the target. I get stunned. Use F1 to gap close again, and then Greatsword 3. Spin. Then I weapon swap here. We use the Sword 5 skill to port onto the target and root both of them, and then use the 4 skill to cleave multiple enemies at the same time. F3. And then right here I'm using my invulnerability, the elite skill block. I D-target and try to rotate out. So I'm using my Greatsword 3 to cover some ground, and my F1 ability also without a target selected to cover some ground. I exit combat and just rotate into home to +1. Once we get up here, Greatsword 3 to gap close, start spinning, or F1, and then start spinning, and then using the elite skill, not the elite skill, the utility skill, I'm sorry. Switch weapons, Sword 2, Sword 5, Sword 4. Gets the kill there. I know he's gonna use his down state to get on top of the node, so I had to get on top of it so he didn't decapture it. And then here, just cleaving him out with whatever. The thief tries to res him, but he just ended up getting cleaved out with the guy because, you know, I have a lot of AoE, so Sword 2, Sword 5 to root him, Sword 4 to finish the kill. This spec feels so good. There's always a button to press. So here again on the node, Sword F1 in, Sword 5, Sword 4. He knocks me down. I use the F3 to get back on node and to break the knockdown. Greatsword 3, Greatsword 2, and then the utility skill puts him down here, and now he's in the down state. And that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another one.